Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer. This is Conversations on Retail. We're so excited that you are here with us today. Our friend Ryan Petty from Supply Pike is joining us this morning for a conversation, a series we call Wrap Session. It's intended to be really an informal conversation with experts about topics that are the most relevant to the community. And today, Ryan's going to spend some time talking with us about OTIF compliance. And Ryan is definitely no stranger to the supplier community. And really excited to hear from him. We do have a small group today, as I was sharing with Ryan, which is great. But a couple of the housekeeping issues before we get started. The purpose of this is not just to be Ryan presenting out. We really want people to be submitting questions and offering insights and sharing some ideas of their own, some best practices. So if you would, use the Q&A button as Ryan is presenting and go ahead and submit any kind of questions that you have. We want you to be a part of this conversation. So without any further ado, Ryan, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for the time this morning, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks for inviting me on to talk about OTIF, and thanks everybody who joined. Excited to talk about OTIF challenges and how we can help you kind of dig through some of these compliance requirements that Walmart has put on us. So with that, we're going to start with just kind of a brief overview of OTIF and Supply Pike and who I am, and just some basics. And then we'll move on to kind of the Q&A. And like Matt said, we would love to hear your questions and talk about how we can help. I know we get a lot of feedback through these sessions where suppliers from different categories and freight methods are all able to kind of provide input and help us all gain a greater knowledge of this challenging compliance program. So without further ado, I will kick us off here. So a little bit about me. I am the senior product manager at Supply Pike, and I manage actually a couple of our products, which includes our OTIF radar solution, as well as our deductions navigator for Kroger solution, where we kind of battle AP deductions with Kroger. So I have been at Supply Pike for around 6 years. I have previously sort of managed a transportation management system, which obviously was a helpful background getting into OTIF compliance. I'm local to the NWA area, University of Arkansas graduate, and I love to travel and get outdoors and away from technology sometimes. But yeah, that is just a little bit about me and my background. So Supply Pike, if you haven't heard of us, we are a cloud-based company that develops web solutions to help CPGs really maximize your cash flow, sort of fight those chargebacks that you're getting from retailers that directly impact your bottom line. And that happens through compliance issues, deductions, chargebacks, all of those things. So we build tools that help you identify, investigate, and dispute and recover those dollars that the retailers are sometimes clawing out of your hands. So that's our purpose. And we work with over 200 CPGs in a lot of different categories. You can see some of our larger brands here that we work with. And we hope that if you're on the call and we don't work with you today, that we may have yours up here on a slide in the near future. So as just to kind of clarify the sort of tools and range of what Supply Pike can potentially help you with, we have several different products here. So starting kind of in the top left, our deductions navigator is our tool where we can help you fight those AP deductions, things like the shortages and other deductions where the retailer is deducting directly off your invoice and paying you less than what you expected. OTIF Radar is obviously our OTIF compliance product where we can help you identify your compliance issues, invalid fines, dispute those, recover those fines back, as well as prevent and fix issues so you can reduce those fines. We have a supplier wiki side of SupplyPike where we have crafted content from a whole host of different experts, so that if you're struggling with learning and understanding the myriad of retailer requirements, acronyms, terms, there is a lot of great content out on Supplier Wiki for you to review. We also have a Document Explorer product, and this is a new one that we're offering. It's actually based on being able to pull in and associate all your shipping documents to POs across your retailers, so that we can help you gather those shipping documents without hunting them down with carriers, 3PLs, emails, all the things you may have to do. And finally, Retail Intelligence is our tool that helps you analyze your sales, analyze why you're getting out of stocks in retailers, how you can improve replenishment, growth opportunities, and much, much more. So, all right, let's dive into our topic today, which is OTIF compliance with Walmart. And I'm sure if you're attending, you probably already have a decent idea of what the OTIF program really is, but just to get us all on the same foundation, OTIF is Walmart's really primary supply chain compliance program. It measures, its intent is to measure supplier success at delivering goods on time and in full to Walmart DCs. It is not their only compliance program, of course, lots of compliance requirements out there, but SQEP is a new compliance program that I'm sure some of you have heard about, the Supplier Quality Excellence Program. That is a separate compliance program that measures Walmart suppliers on other parts of that supply chain process. OTIF is still by far the program that impacts suppliers the most in what we see in terms of total fines and kind of largest impact. So what OTIF, sort of the key driver for it for most suppliers, is really the fines, the penalties for not meeting OTIF. And so if you don't meet those OTIF requirements, which we'll get into those goals here very shortly, but if you fail to meet OTIF requirements, you can be fined 3% of what Walmart pays you for those non-compliant goods. So that can obviously add up, and those are given out every month based on your monthly performance. You are scored with different metrics, including prepaid on time, collect ready, in full. These are all basically percentage scores that you get every single month. And those percentages are down to the case level. So Walmart is grading you on every single case that was ordered within that month. And that results in those percentage scores. And as you might imagine, there are different requirements for meeting the prepaid on time versus the in full score versus the collect ready score. So those metrics are all part of OTIF, but they do grade slightly different requirements. All right, so who does OTIF impact? So it's not all Walmart suppliers, but it's a good majority of them. Specifically, if you sell in brick and mortar stores and your product is shipped through the DCs, then you are definitely affected by OTIF. If you sell on Walmart.com and you ship to Walmart fulfillment DCs, where Walmart fulfills those individual online orders, then you are also beholden to OTIF as well. Some exceptions for suppliers that are not affected by OTIF include Sam's Club, which does have its own OTIF program. In our experience, they typically are not fining for this. Although if you're on the call and you've seen Sam's OTIF fines, would love to hear that, but usually that's not something that we see. Direct to store deliveries, where you are selling in brick and mortar, but you're delivering directly to the stores. Those types of orders are not beholden to OTIF. And if you're a direct import supplier and Walmart is taking over ownership of the product at the port, then you are also sort of outside of that OTIF scope. Walmart International does have a separate OTIF program, especially Canada, we see come up sometimes. There is a separate OTIF program. Mostly we will not be covering today. There are a lot of overlaps with that kind of OTIF Walmart Canada scenario, but that is a separate program. So what we're focusing on is if you ship product to Walmart US DCs, that's really the type of suppliers that the OTIF information we'll be covering today covers. All right. So I mentioned there's a few metrics for OTIF, and what we see on this slide kind of covers that. And you can see starting at the top, kind of that prepaid on-time metric that is measuring you on being able to deliver to DCs on time. And this only affects prepaid POs. So that basically means if you are responsible for the transportation of the goods to Walmart DCs, generally that is going to be a prepaid order. Whereas if Walmart is collecting the goods at your warehouse or storage facility, then that is a collect scenario, and you are not responsible for delivering on time to the Walmart DC because they're the ones who are picking up the goods. But if you're prepaid, then you have to deliver it within the must arrive by window. That's what they call that MABD on every order. That's essentially the due date. And because it's a little bit confusing, depending on the type of goods you're delivering and whether you're using LTL or full truckload, the delivery window could be anywhere from sort of a 12-hour window all the way up to a 4-day window. But regardless, just key thing to know is that every order has an MABD, and if you're prepaid, you've got to deliver it to the Walmart DC within that must arrive by window to be considered on time. And the goal for all of these metrics that we'll talk about is 98%. It didn't used to be this way up until a year or two ago. It was as low as 70% and for some of these metrics. So Walmart has substantially increased these OTIF goals over time and obviously made it harder to meet and avoid fines. So collect ready. This metric at a high level is measuring collect suppliers' ability to respond to new POs and route them within a sort of designated period of time. So usually it's about 1 day that you have from when Walmart sends you the PO. You've got about 1 day, 24 hours or so to route that PO. And that basically just means schedule pickup for that PO. That's the first part of being collect ready. The second part is when Walmart's truck shows up to pick up the goods, that the goods are actually available and ready for pickup, and the truck can actually pick up those goods. So that's the second part of being collect ready if you're a collect supplier. And then lastly, in full, I'm sure we're all familiar with fill rate. It's just your ability to fulfill all of the goods that Walmart has ordered within a period of time. So for each order. So those are the metrics. The requirements don't initially sound so crazy, but I'm sure as some of you have seen and as we'll dig into, there's a lot of sort of nuance in these requirements that can make it quite challenging. So lastly, I do want to mention before we get into the Q&A that if any of you like, SupplyPike will offer a free OTIF impact analysis where we can dig into your specific OTIF performance, what we see as the issues that you are facing based on the data and analysis that we can do. And we can also supply kind of some insights and suggestions for how to take on these issues. So yeah, no commitment, no charge or anything like that. Sort of freely available impact analysis. If any of you are interested in that, then just let us know after the webinar. I think with that, Matt, we are ready for Q&A.
All right, great. I just want to reiterate what Ryan just said. And one of the reasons why Supply Pike is truly one of my favorite companies to work with and to refer folks to is because you all give so much away. Not only the time that you're spending to have this conversation today and the classes that you're teaching with Supplier Wiki, but just the one-on-one work that you do as a follow-up. And I hope the folks that are joining live now and that are watching the video later really will take you up on it, because it's a tremendous service to sit down and look at a company's data and then to make recommendations on the basis of what their needs actually are. So thanks for that. And I hope some folks will take advantage. We got some great questions, Ryan. I want to go ahead and kick off. First question is, can you get an OTIF and SQEP fine on the same PO? Isn't that double dipping?
Great question. And in Walmart's world, yes, you absolutely can get fined on the same PO for both OTIF and SQEP. I very briefly mentioned SQEP during those slides, but the intent of SQEP really does cover some additional processes that in theory OTIF does not. So, OTIF requirements are A, B, and C, and SQEP just added D, E, and F. And so now you can get fined for failing at issue B and issue E on the same PO. And another kind of related question we often get is you can also get an AP deduction, like a shortage deduction from Walmart's AP team on the same PO. So you could actually get sort of triple dipped with Walmart for all three of those chargeback types. That is an unfortunate part of the possibilities of what you have to deal with.
Some more great questions coming in, Ryan. The next one says, are there resources that you can share to show the must arrive by date window options depending on how you ship and what department you're in?
Yes, there is some material that we can supply. I know that on Supplier Wiki, we have some documentation about this. It is also out and available within Retail Link Supplier Academy. So if that's one of those, if we can supply kind of specific documents to the person who asked, and happy to share those windows, because it does vary from, if you're delivering fresh food, Walmart has kind of a very tight time window to deliver that fresh food, grocery type product, all the way up to 4-day delivery time, and anytime in these 4 days, you're considered on time, and every range in between. So yeah, definitely important to know what your specific MABD window is. We'd be happy to share that information.
What should I do if I don't have enough inventory? We're having supply chain issues like everyone else and are having to cancel every week. It's very frustrating.
That is definitely something we've been hearing a lot, and supply chain has been impacted for quite some time. So there's a couple of paths you can consider taking in this sort of realm. Firstly, canceling was mentioned, and that is a tactic that can be taken. It is obviously not going to impact orders for the next month. You're canceling at the PO or the line level. So you kind of have to keep up and do this on every single transaction that's impacted. But that is a way to help with the OTIF fines. So the key for OTIF compliance and whether you're going to get fined for these canceled cases is when you go to cancel, and usually this is done in Nova, you have the ability to select a cancellation reason, and there's kind of a drop down list of reasons that you can pick from, and depending on the reason that is selected, that is who owns the accountability. So if you choose something, then probably the most common reason that I see selected is supplier does not have product, which is sometimes the reality of the matter. and it's very easy to pick. So if you choose supplier does not have product, that will fall on your accountability as a supplier, and you will potentially be fined for those canceled cases. So that's maybe not the path you want to choose for avoiding OTIF compliance. There are other reasons to pick, such as weather, natural disaster, and of course, sometimes that's going to be hard to pick over and over again. But certainly, if there are any kind of justification for using weather, natural disaster that you can come up with, if you can justify it, that's a reason you can pick, and Walmart will take the accountability when you choose that. There's another one that we see used sometimes, which is, let me see here, I think it is incorrect setup. And that reason is, sorry, I had it pulled up. It's system issue, which means an incorrect system setup due to Walmart caused issues. So it's kind of a vague cancel reason code called system issue, but that is one that Walmart will take the accountability on. And we do see suppliers sometimes use it. So I would definitely try to use Walmart cancel reason codes when you can to avoid the OTIF accountability. There is a chance that Walmart can actually override the reason you pick. So if you're picking weather, natural disaster on every single order that you're canceling from now until October, they're probably going to start to override some of those reasons. But it's certainly something worth trying when you are canceling. Use a Walmart accountability code if you possibly can in any way. And even if you just try it and they override it, you haven't lost anything. So, and if they don't override it, then you totally avoid paying a fine on those canceled cases. So that's the long-winded answer of the first approach to when you don't have inventory and you can't fulfill an order. If you want to think about if you have an extended supply chain issue related to an item or a group of items that is not going to get resolved for months, then that is when you may want to talk to your buyer about potentially either your buyer or your replenishment manager about potentially reducing order volume for certain items for some time. If that's 3 months or 6 months, whatever you think you need in terms of time to get your supply chain back up and running and able to fulfill those orders, you can approach your buyer RM about trying to adjust that order quantity going forward. There's something called an order cap that my coworker Stacy Tan has talked about, and that is another area to look into. I am not as much of an expert on that, but if you've heard of that kind of order cap process, that may be worth looking into as well. But definitely, for individual orders, canceling is the best tactic. But then if you're going to have extended issues for a long period of time, then a conversation with your buyer RM about replenishing this item, potentially reducing how much is being ordered, I think is the right step to take there.
The next question is, I'm a collect supplier. What do I do if the Walmart truck doesn't show up on time at my facility? Is that my fault?
Definitely not in any reasonable way, not your fault. And that is something we hear a lot from collect suppliers, that sometimes Walmart's trucks just don't show up. We also kind of a related issue. Sometimes Walmart trucks show up and their trailer is 90% full and you're supposed to put 10 pallets on the trailer. So what are you supposed to do? So the prescribed process, if this happens, that Walmart tells you is to file a ticket in their transportation ticket portal, which is a separate app outside of Retail Link. It's called the Transportation Ticket Portal. And you can file a ticket there to essentially report that failed pickup or that the truck showed up without enough space. And that is what they tell you to do. And in theory, their transportation team is going to see those tickets. If the truck didn't show up, they're going to help you reschedule the pickup of that sort of failed pickup. But the most important thing for OTIF compliance is that creates a paper trail of the Walmart carrier being at fault for that scenario. You're documenting that, their truck didn't show up, and hopefully that will help you avoid getting any kind of OTIF charges if you follow that prescribed process. But sometimes we see Walmart still fine you on those POs where this happens. And even if you document it in the portal, at the very least, though, if you documented it, you've created your own proof to dispute these charges with. So it's just a good idea to file those tickets every time that happens. And that will hopefully help you avoid the charge. But if the charge comes through, then you have a paper trail to dispute with. So that's my recommendation there.
Yeah, good stuff. Next question. Any tips for disputing OTIF e-commerce charges?
Yes. So just quick high level, e-commerce has a specific portal for you to dispute charges with. They've actually had a dispute process for a lot longer than the store's OTIF program, as opposed to e-com. It's called the GEC for Global E-commerce GEC portal or ticket portal. And that is where you file these disputes. There is an exact process in Supplier Academy. If you go to the ecom OTIF page, it'll actually tell you all the exact steps that you need to take to file a ticket within that portal, as well as how to get an account if you don't have it. So the most important part is just getting access to the dispute portal and seeing the exact process for filling it out. And then once you do that, what we've seen is that they are going to ask you for supporting documentation for the charges that you're disputing. And you're basically making your case. You're filling out the ticket description. You're submitting any supporting documentation to kind of back up your reason for the dispute. And so anything like shipping documents, those transportation portal tickets that I just mentioned, anything that proves your case, that will help to file with those tickets. So Supplier Academy's got the exact sort of link and the steps to fill out that ticket. For e-commerce OTIF, there is a prescribed process. So just make sure you're going through that process, and then you can get those disputes filed and hopefully some charges recovered.
Very good. Next question. How do I dispute OTIF fines? I saw something about being able to do it through high radius now. I thought only the buyer could waive fines.
Yeah, that's a good question. So up until February of this year, Walmart has never had an official dispute process for the OTIF stores program. And that's usually the side where people have their largest fines from the Walmart brick and mortar side. So until February, our best suggestion, this is from talking to former and current Walmart buyers, from talking to many suppliers who have gone through and attempted this, is to reach out to your buyer and ask for the fine to be waived before it actually gets issued. And so you're not disputing the charge once it's been invoiced, you're actually asking your buyer to waive the fine before it comes out. And usually we recommend to make that request at least a week prior to when the invoice would be posted, so the buyer has time to react. So that we saw, a fair bit of success. We saw anywhere from small to 6-digit fines reversed and approved by the buyers, who seem to have the authority to waive those fines before they hit. Unfortunately, not all buyers are created equal, and some buyers would be willing to help you. Some of them are not willing, and they feel like OTIF charges are kind of final. So hit and miss success on disputing with your buyer in terms of what we observed. But in February, Walmart slid in a small update to their OTIF FAQ document and said, our OTIF charge is disputable. Yes, you can do it within high radius. And if you're not familiar, high radius is a separate sort of portal for Walmart suppliers that should be free to access. You may have an admin already that has access to this, but it is the portal where Walmart posts all their accounts receivable, their AR charges that they're posing to you. And that includes OTIF, that includes SQEP, and there are some other charge types as well that they can issue and that could be found within high radius. So that's where you can go to dispute. You can find your OTIF invoices, and the difference with disputing in high radius is you're disputing after the fine has been posted. Your OTIF fine will not show up in high radius until it has actually been issued by Walmart. And once that happens, then you can select your OTIF invoice and you can click on dispute. So that's the process. Question is should we do it through high radius or should we do it through the buyer? And we are definitely rapidly learning sort of what the new norm is going to be, as Walmart just kind of released this process recently. And what we're seeing so far is that some buyers are now telling their suppliers, you need to go to high radius to dispute the OTIF charge. If that happens, then obviously high radius is probably going to be where you need to go to file the dispute. I would say that at the moment, if you have a good relationship with your buyer and if they've approved OTIF disputes in the past, I would just keep doing it until they say no or until they move you to high radius. If you've had success with that, it's definitely worth trying to make sure that that door is actually closed before you close it. The other thing is, if you've never disputed with your buyer, then it still may be worth a shot, because from our standpoint, buyers are busy. If you can make a good case and you've been a good supplier and had a good relationship with that buyer, then they may be a little bit more forgiving than kind of these dispute associates who are sort of coldly looking at the data, trying to analyze whether to approve your dispute or not. They don't have any kind of relationship with you. So try with your buyer. If they point you to high radius, then that's your only option.
I've heard from some teams that Walmart is proactively waiving OTIF fines for a few suppliers. How can we be a part of that?
That is a great question. So in all of my experience with that scenario, it seems to typically be the buyer who's the key contact at Walmart to kind of have that conversation with, broach this subject and also potentially help you, make that happen. The buyers are the ones who are already waiving individual fines before they are issued. And so if you can get any kind of waiver, they're going to be your best contact for making that happen. I would say it's still pretty rare that we see that, but we have definitely observed it, anywhere from 3 or 6 month, maybe even longer waivers where Walmart will kind of give you some blanket forgiveness. So it's worth a shot, especially if you have significant supply chain problems, if there is, legitimate things happening outside of your control, if you're doing everything you can and you can really justify the request, then, you can try it and see how that goes. We haven't seen that happen too often, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And I would recommend talking to your buyer through that conversation.
Great. Next question is simply, how do you access Nova? They looked in Retail Link and didn't find it, as you said, but how can someone go about accessing Nova?
Yeah, so definitely, so first of all, to check if you have access, you can go into Retail Link, you can click that apps tab, and then you can search for, and the app is called Nova, N-O-V-A. So obviously start with searching in your apps to see if you have access to it. If you do not, there is a process. Number one, your Retail Link admin can actually potentially add that app access to your user account. So if you know who your retail link admin is, then they can give you access to that app. When Nova was first introduced, you as a supplier actually had to request access from Walmart to it. So if no one, even your admin, doesn't have access to Nova, then I would reach out to the Retail Link help desk. If I get a second, I'll see if I can find the phone number. There's a phone number for Retail Link help desk. And that's probably who I would go to. If your admin does not have access, I would recommend calling that Retail Link help desk.
Very good. Next question. Have any suppliers reported submitting cancel codes through Nova that are not reported or flagged in OTIF?
Can you say that one more time, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Have any suppliers reported submitting cancel codes through Nova that are not reported or flagged in OTIF?
It's a good question. So not that I'm aware of. So one thing to note is in the Retail Link OTIF scorecard app, where you can go to view your OTIF performance, when you review the PO data for OTIF performance, there is a column now for cancellation or edit reason on these POs. And you can see down to either the line level or at the PO kind of header level, you can see what reason was selected on each of those POs. So if there was a cancellation or edit, it should be within that OTIF app in that specific column, that cancellation or edit reason column. And you should be able to see that. I think sometimes I've seen something where OTIF will kind of list business reasons. And it's not always, it doesn't seem like you can select that option. So I do think that Walmart potentially has the ability to select additional reasons that the supplier does not have access to. So there could be a scenario where Walmart can pick a reason that that you cannot. But in general, what you select in Nova should come across to OTIF, and you should be able to verify that on the PO data in OTIF with that reason column.
Great. Our friend Stacy added the Retail Link help desk phone number in the chat for anyone who needs it. So Ryan will save you from looking for that. Next question, it says, is the no Windows appointment available? Does that count as is that a supplier's responsibility? Our OTIF is low because of no Windows available. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think I got it. So So if you're a prepaid supplier and you're responsible for delivering to the DCs on time, then, one challenge that prepaid suppliers have is, they get the PO, they have the MABD date, they know when they need to deliver it by, and they go into Walmart's appointment system and they try to schedule an appointment for that due date, and there are no appointments available. So, what are you supposed to do in that scenario? And Walmart does have some prescribed steps to take in this scenario. So number one, what they tell you to do is, if there's not an appointment available in the window, schedule it for the earliest available time, and then submit what they call a callback request on the delivery appointment. And essentially what you fill out in that callback request is, you can say, here's my appointment currently, here's when I would like to move my appointment to. So you can fill in your requested appointment date that fits your MABD window and basically ask Walmart to manually move your appointment into the window. So that's step one. Then they say, either Walmart will approve your request and they'll move it to the window and everything's good, or they'll either deny you and say, we don't have any appointments available, we can't do it, or they may not reply after so long. And so Walmart's last kind of escalation step, they they tell you to submit an email. And I'll post in the Zoom chat here some email addresses that you can submit. But basically, if it's a grocery, high velocity, Walmart DC, there's an email address to escalate to for it. If it's a regional DC, RDC, then there's an email address for escalating there. So the long and short of it is you sort of try to escalate when there's no appointments available in the window. And if that doesn't work, you've created your paper trail. And if you do get a fine, then you've got that paper trail to dispute with. So kind of the same story. Do everything you possibly can, document what you did, and then hopefully you avoid OTIF charges. But if you do have OTIF charges, you've got all your ducks in a row, you've got the paperwork, and then you can dispute with that. So, yeah.
So our friend Darlene just submit this. It says there is now a code needed to get Nova access. And that code number, for anybody that wants to write it down, that code number for Nova access is 200087. 200087 is a code needed to get Nova access. Okay, next question. We are prepaid. I know for sure that we are not having in full issues as we have more than enough product, but we keep getting hit with on-time fines. Can we get our carrier to pay for these fines? It seems unfair for us to pay since it's not our fault. Do you know of any suppliers that have done this?
So yes, we do know some suppliers who have kind of passed on the fines to third parties that have specifically impacted them. One thing that I would, if you're going to, number one, if you want to investigate and understand and kind of root cause your on-time charges, it is critical. You have to do this. You really need to break down your on-time scores and performance by carrier. So obviously, if you want to pass on any fines or if you want to review performance with the carrier, you need to have ideally the data to show what that carrier has done and how it's impacted you from a score and fine perspective. So a lot of suppliers out there are using multiple carriers to fulfill all their deliveries to Walmart. So first step is just kind of to break down the POs that were delivered by each carrier. And then you can kind of aggregate some of that information, look at how many cases they delivered, how many cases were late. You can start to kind of create that on-time percentage per carrier. You can add up all the fines on the POs that you got that they delivered. And then you can really present them a clear picture of their performance. Here's how your performance impacted me with this amount of fines. And usually what we see is first a conversation with the carrier to highlight their performance gaps, show how much it's impacted you, and then try to work with that carrier to resolve those issues. If that doesn't resolve it, then I think, after you do that step, then I think it's totally fair to start to push back on some of those fines and at least request, if not the carrier to pay you back, at least request for discounts on future loads. So get that money back one way or another. And then obviously you might reach a point where you need to start working with a different third-party carrier that hopefully you just don't have to deal with the fines whatsoever on. But definitely suppliers who are giving carriers lots of business have, of course, more sway to get that carrier's attention and their desire to make you a happy customer. So if that means paying a month's fine, then some of them are definitely willing to do that. We've seen that. Probably not the norm, but we have seen it.
Great. We have a hard stop in 13 minutes and a lot of questions to get through. But I hope that if we've learned one thing during this conversation today, it's that you all have a friend in Ryan Petty at Supply Pike. And if there's questions that we don't get answered, I would encourage you to send those to him. And I know he or someone else from the team would be delighted to get back with you. So next question, Ryan. I'm a new Walmart Canada supplier. Ryan mentioned that Canada suppliers are exempt from OTIF. Just wanted to check if there's any other supply chain requirements that I should be aware of other than OTIF in Canada.
Yeah, and just to clarify there, because I went through a whole round of different supplier types and who's affected or not. So Canada does have an OTIF program, just to clarify. It's different kind of rules than what we went over today. It's similar compliance program, but it's the data in Retail Link, for example, is in a different app than the data for USDCs. The fines are separate. So there are some differences in that Canada OTIF program, but there is an actual OTIF program that you may be a part of. So I would recommend starting in Retail Link if you're a Canada supplier and looking for that OTIF International app so that you can view your OTIF performance and chargebacks. And then Supplier Academy should have some additional information. So Canada is one. You're still affected by OTIF potentially, but it's just a little bit different program. So as far as I know, I don't want to give out any false information on the fly here. I believe that SQEP is that is a requirement for Canada suppliers as well. But outside of that, I'll be honest, Matt, I don't know too much else that Canada suppliers specifically are sort of, have to deal with. So that may be one we could research and kind of follow up on after this. My email has already been up, and so feel free to reach out afterwards and we can find some exact information. I know we have some, but thankfully I've got a team behind me that knows much more than me collectively.
That's great. Next question. How far back can I go to dispute OTIF fines? I'm on the accounts receivable side, and I know Walmart lets you dispute up to 2 years typically. Is that true for OTIF? What about SQEP?
Yeah. So for OTIF, there is not prescribed guidance. Walmart released this in February. They issued this update on our OTIF charges disputable, and they said yes in high radius. And not much else was included. They very briefly mentioned that you can supply supporting documentation, screenshots, et cetera, to fight these charges. And that's about it. They did not state how far back you can go. High radius seems to hold on to your OTIF invoices for quite a while, at least a year in what I've seen. We have observed a 5-month-old invoice for OTIF that was disputed in high radius and partially approved. So we know you can at least go back 5 months, which means it's probably at least 6 months time window to dispute OTIF charges, but it very well could be further back than that. You should still be able to find those OTIF invoices older than that in high radius, and it's worth a shot to go back further. We know it at least goes back 5 months and probably more than that. But unfortunately, as in many things with Walmart, they did not explicitly state what your window is. And I think you mentioned SQEP. I believe it's kind of a similar scenario. I do want to point out that SQEP charges are, again, also found in high radius. You can also dispute with virtually the same process of completing that dispute form for SQEP charges, just like you do with OTIF. Of course, the supporting documentation and reason for dispute may differ, but same general dispute process in high radius.
Great. Next question is hopefully easier to answer. Have you heard of Walmart waiving fines because of rising container costs?
I have not heard of that. But, this is the scenario where I think when you dispute through your buyer, you've got a human being that you work with and that you can reason with, that you have a relationship with. And so when you dispute through your buyer, there's no constraint on what you can dispute, reasons you can dispute for. So I think that if you can kind of come up with your reasoning and your buyer is sympathetic to it, then it's all possible. In our experience, they're not like limited to an exact set of criteria to be able to approve your dispute. So I think it's worth potentially making the case to your buyer. You probably won't have much success going to high radius and disputing for that reason, but your buyer may be more sympathetic.
Great. Next question. Can you please clarify if we will still get OTIF fines even if we cancel?
So there's two possibilities. The answer is it depends. So sorry for the nuance there, but it's all based on the reason code that is picked. So when you go to cancel, in Nova, you have to select a reason code, and the reason code is what will determine whether the accountability falls on you as a supplier or Walmart for that accountability. So reasons like supplier does not have product, you're going to own the accountability. You will potentially be fined on that. If you choose, weather, natural disaster, or that system setup cancel reason that I mentioned, those are a couple of the more common Walmart cancel reasons where they own the accountability. So it all depends on the reason you pick. So I would make sure that you understand what those reasons are, who owns the accountability, and try to use the Walmart reasons as much as you possibly can justify. And then it's important to follow up when you're picking these reason codes. I mentioned Walmart has the ability to override them. So that's where reviewing your OTIF performance in the OTIF scorecard can help you confirm, did your reason where you picked Walmart stick, or are they actually overriding those? You could also go into Nova a week or so later and check to see if they updated your cancel reason. But yeah.
Great. Next question. So someone who's brand new at this feels overwhelmed, wants to know if there's an OTIF glossary of terms somewhere. Do you all have something like that on Supplier Wiki?
Yeah, we do. We have, I think we call it the ultimate guide to OTIF. Sounds like, yeah, it's got a lot of great material in it.
Great material.
So yeah, it's got a glossary of terms. It's got, all the compliance issues, the descriptions of those issues, best practices on disputing, improving OTIF scores. So that's all available in Supplier Wiki. It's called the Ultimate Guide to Improving OTIF. I would highly recommend that.
Goodness, a handful left. How is SupplyPike's OTIF different than Walmart's OTIF? Can I use it with my buyer, or will they not know what it is?
Yeah, so SupplyPike's OTIF, what we've tried to do is basically, if you've ever investigated OTIF, that relevant data is kind of spread out in a bunch of different places. And so the OTIF scorecard in Retail Link will give you a high level report card, basically, of here's what happened for this time period, but it's just the outcome. And, a lot of times to understand the root causes of those OTIF issues, you have to dig and look in your systems or other apps within Retail Link, look up those transportation portal tickets, try to string together all these insights of what happened. And it's just incredibly tedious. So our solution, what we try to help suppliers with, is pulling all of that data together in one spot so that, number one, you have all that visibility without any of the effort to get to all that data together. We also offer kind of perspectives that are not available in Retail Link, such as break down all your carriers by on-time score and how much in fines you're receiving from those carriers' deliveries. We create scorecards as well in our solution, so you can grade individual carriers with detailed performance and fine information. You can break down all of your items to see which ones are really driving your fill rate issues, score by warehouse, by vendor number, department, even sort of customize segments of your data. So we want to take out all the effort in kind of grouping and viewing and aggregating this information to here's the insights, here's what you should focus on to really improve your OTIF performance. And then we also identify invalid fines. Matt, I know you probably have seen Walmart sometimes will incorrectly issue blame to the supplier when they might be at fault. And so we help you pull together those scenarios where they're finding you for reasons that were out of your control or not your fault. And so we help you identify those and prep that information for disputing so that you can recover those dollars. So those are some of the differences and more, but quick description of it.
I was so hopeful we were going to get through all these questions, but they keep coming in, and so we do have a hard stop. One question I want to make sure we get to, because I think it's a really good one. Our line review is coming up, and our buyer wants to cover our OTIF score. Any tips on what we should be focused on?
So number one, I would be reviewing my OTIF scores and fines that I've received. I would want to know, if you're having OTIF problems, is it for on-time deliveries? Is it for collect ready? Is it for fill rate? So you should know which metrics you're really, struggling with potentially. And then if that has been a trend and you are struggling at one metric or another, which a lot of suppliers are, it's always good to come prepared with kind of an action plan or steps, at least, of what you are taking to try to improve those numbers. And I know meeting OTIF requirements is tough and supply chain is constricted. And I don't think any reasonable buyer is going to expect 100% success. Hopefully not. But even with all that caveat, if your score is not that great, it's at least important to address it and to bring up some of the things that you are doing to try to improve it, so that they know you're at least paying attention to it and you're trying to improve that over time. So I think that's where I would really focus.
Ryan, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We didn't get to all the questions. We got to an awful lot of them. Can't tell you how much it means to me and to us that you would take this time to spend with us and answer some of these questions. And if I can offer a little bit of tough love, there's really not any excuse for a supplier to be struggling with this stuff when they have got, Ryan and his team at Supply Pike that's willing to take a phone call and have a conversation with absolutely no strings attached. So I would really encourage you, if you didn't get your question answered or if you're struggling with something, there's no reason to try to figure it out on your own when you've got, an individual and a team that is so eager to answer questions, develop relationships, and so forth. So Ryan, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to talking with you all again soon.